Marin Reeves, my best friend, suddenly told me she'd gotten back together with her ex. I tore into her for going back to a man who'd already hurt her, but she only gave me a bitter smile. Maybe some people are just destined to keep getting tangled up with each other. Nay, I don't need your validation. I just don't want you to be mad at me. At the time, I didn't understand what Marin really meant. I thought she was only worried. I get worked up over that jerk again. Seeing the conflict on her face, I couldn't bring myself to keep scolding her. I simply hugged her and told her not to settle for anything that made her unhappy. Then a year later, I went to the hospital because of severe menstrual cramps and unexpectedly saw her leaving the maternity ward. Confused, I was about to approach her when a man hurried over, carefully helping her along and fussing over her every need. In an instant, I instinctively ducked behind the corner, my entire body trembling uncontrollably because that man was none other than Isaiah Cole, my husband of 3 years. I pressed myself against the cold tile wall, clamping both hands over my mouth as I held my breath. Through the narrow opening beyond the corner, I watched Isaiah Cole, my husband, the man I'd loved for 5 years and been married to for 3, carefully support Marin Reeves, my best friend of 7 years. The tenderness on his face was one I knew all too well. Isaiah lowered his head and murmured something to her, casually reached out and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. Marin stared down at the report in her hand, her expression unreadable, but her other hand drifted instinctively to her still flat stomach. As they walked away, something compelled me to follow them. Keeping my steps slow and quiet, I trailed them all the way to the parking garage where I watched Isaiah open the passenger door and place one hand against the roof of the car, shielding Marin's head as she climbed inside. The black Maybach glided out of the hospital. I stood alone in the garage, shaking. My phone suddenly vibrated twice inside my purse, the sound jarring in the deathly silence. Trembling fingers, I unlocked the screen. 2 text messages appeared, one after the other. The first was from Marin. Yura Marimo, your cramps any better today? I sent you some heating patches. Remember to stay hydrated, okay? So, I won't be coming to the office to keep you company. Love you. The second was from Isaiah. Meeting came up, and I can't get away to pick you up from the hospital. Be good and take an Uber home. I'll bring you that Mont Blanc cake you love. Tonight to make it up to you. I doubled over the nearest trash can and wretched. I had no idea how I could face Isaiah or Marin again. So I fled the city center in a panic, took a cab straight to my parents' house, and requested an extended leave of absence from work. The moment I opened the front door to my parents' house, my mother, Victoria Bentley, looked up from the sweater she was knitting. My father, Randy Bentley, sat beside her with his headphones on, listening to an old-time radio drama. At the sound of the door, Mom looked up. The instant she saw my face, the ball of yarn slipped from her hands and fell to the floor. What are you doing? What's wrong? Why do you look so pale? Dad yanked off his headphones and hurried over. The moment I saw the concern and love written all over their faces, the last of the strength that had kept me going finally gave out. Dad, Mom. My knees buckled and I sank onto the rug by the front door. Then, like a child who had been hurt beyond repair, I burst into tears. Between broken sobs, I told them everything I had seen at the hospital and showed them the 2 sickening text messages. Dad shook with fury. He slammed his palm against the coffee table so hard the cups rattled. That scoundrel, that ungrateful lowlife. I'm going to his office right now, and when I'm done with him, he'll wish he'd never been born. And your so-called best friend. We've always treated her like family. How could she do something this despicable? Mom wrapped her arms tightly around me, crying as she rubbed my back. You've never been treated this way. Divorce him. You have to divorce him. Our family doesn't need a damn thing from him. I grabbed the hem of Dad's shirt, wiped my tears away with the back of my hand and shook my head. I'm going to divorce him. I'm not letting him walk away from this without consequences. And I'm not ending my marriage without knowing the whole truth. When they saw the resolve in my swollen, bloodshot eyes, my parents fell silent. They knew me too well. I had never been someone who could look the other way after being betrayed. Dad's eyes reddened as he crouched in front of me and stroked my hair. All right, Renee, we won't do anything reckless. Remember this, no matter what you decide or how far you want to take it. If the whole world comes crashing down, your mother and I will hold it up for you. I spent the next 3 days at my parents' house in a daze. And the private investigator I had paid a small fortune delivered a thick manila envelope. I drew a deep breath, trying to prepare myself for whatever was inside. I wasn't the only person caught up in this anymore. There was also that ex with whom Marin had supposedly gotten back together. But when I opened the envelope, the truth hit me like a sledgehammer. Isaiah was her ex. I had always known there was a man who had broken Marin's heart, but I had never met him. She had told me the memories were too painful, so she had deleted everything connected to him and refused to even say his name. However, on an old private social media account, she had kept more than 5 years' worth of photos and posts from over a decade ago, preserving every trace of their sweet, innocent young love. They were childhood sweethearts from 18 to 22. They had loved each other with a passion neither of them had ever forgotten. They had shared an entire history. Yet when I first introduced them, they had pretended to be complete strangers. According to the investigator's report, Isaiah's parents had looked down on Marin's family for being poor and considered her beneath their social standing. They had refused to accept the relationship under any circumstances. His family humiliated Marin and forced them apart. She left town and he fell gravely ill. I let out a sudden laugh. I laughed until tears splashed onto the pages. So what if I was the perfect match for him? Compared to the tragic, all-consuming love story between the two of them, every sweet memory Isaiah and I had shared felt as bland as plain water. I met Isaiah at a charity gala and thought we were soulmates. Maybe we connected so easily only because I was so much like Marin. The woman he could never forget had carved herself into his soul. I had only ever been her replacement. A thought suddenly struck me. My fingers hurriedly flipped through the journal, until I found the answer I'd been desperate to know. When had their affair started again? A year ago, the night before Isaiah and I celebrated our second wedding anniversary, he got drunk at a business dinner and, out of sheer habit, called the number he knew by heart, Erin. She picked him up that night and they ended up at a hotel. Neither of them came out until morning. After that, the same mistake kept happening over and over again. As I replayed every suspicious detail from the past year, I wanted nothing more than to slap myself across the face. Maybe some people are just destined to stay tangled together. Renee, I don't need your validation. Just don't want you to be angry with me. Marin's words echoed through my mind once again. I wasn't angry. I was disgusted. If they were destined to belong together, then what was I? Just the obstacle standing in the way of their destiny? I locked myself in my room for an entire day. I returned to the place where I'd lived for the past 3 years, where I believed was home. The moment I opened the front door, I saw a warm floor lamp glowing softly in the living room. Isaiah was sitting on the couch in gray loungewear, flipping through a stack of documents. The instant he heard the door, he set everything aside and walked over. As naturally as breathing, he took my bag from my hand and pulled me into his arms. You're finally home, sweetheart. Everything okay with your mom? His voice was low and gentle, carrying just the right hint of concern. He smelled faintly of body wash. It used to be the scent that made me feel safest. Now it made my stomach churn. Yeah, everything's taken care of. I dug my fingernails into my thigh, forcing myself not to shove him away as I let him hold me. I stayed a few extra days with my parents. Sorry for making you worry. His eyes flickered for just a second, almost as if he'd finally relaxed. He reached up and brushed my cheek with his thumb. You still look a little pale. I'll have Maria make you some chicken broth tomorrow. He paused before smiling. Oh, and Marin's been asking about you too. She said you've been out of the office and she hasn't had anyone to chat with. Hearing her name roll off his tongue so naturally made my heart seize, as though someone had driven a needle straight through it. The two of them really were perfect actors. One played the devoted lover in bed. The other played the devoted best friend outside of it. I swallowed the icy hatred rising inside me, and smiled as if nothing was wrong. I've missed Marin too. I looked into his eyes. Isaiah, next month is our 3rd wedding anniversary. I want to throw a big party. Everyone's been so busy these past few years. I'd love to invite all our friends and celebrate properly. What do you think? Of course. Smiling, he leaned down and kissed my forehead. As long as it makes you happy, do whatever you want. Have my assistant book the venue. The next day, I called Marin. She picked up after the very first ring. Her voice was filled with concern, flawless enough to fool anyone. Renee, you finally called. Are you feeling better? I've been so worried about you. I smiled, though there wasn't a trace of warmth in my eyes. I'm fine now, Marin. Next month is Isaiah and my 3rd wedding anniversary. We're throwing a party. And as my best friend, you have to be there. There was the briefest pause before she answered, her voice carrying a hint of strange restraint. Of course, just send me the date. I'll definitely be there. Great. My tone stayed light while my gaze turned ice cold. Marin, make sure you dress up. After all, there's going to be a very big surprise that day. And after hanging up, I tossed my phone onto the table and closed my eyes in exhaustion. A month later, in the grand ballroom of the Langford Hotel, the city's most luxurious hotel, Isaiah had rented out the entire top floor. The ballroom looked like something out of a fairy tale, decorated everywhere with white roses I'd once casually mentioned I liked. Yet the guest of honor, the woman everyone was waiting for, was sitting 20 miles away in the airport VIP lounge. My parents were live streaming everything for me on the screen. Isaiah, dressed in a perfectly tailored custom suit, moved gracefully through the crowd with a champagne flute in hand. However, the way he kept checking his watch betrayed the anxiety he was desperately trying to hide. Not far from him, beside the dessert table, stood Marin. She wore a champagne-colored gown with a loose, flowing silhouette, though she deliberately chose it to hide her pregnancy. After another month, the slight curve of her belly was beginning to show. The two of them kept their distance from one another, staying careful and doing everything they could to avoid attracting suspicion. I glanced at the time in the corner of my screen. It was almost time. The show was about to begin. A second later, the massive carved doors of the ballroom swung open. The once lively room fell instantly silent. Every head turned toward the entrance. The woman of the evening wasn't there. Instead, Dad walked in first, wearing a tailored black suit, his face dark with fury. Beside him was Mom in an elegant pantsuit, her expression razor-sharp. Following behind them were 4 bodyguards dressed entirely in black. Isaiah froze for a split second before immediately putting on his practiced smile and hurrying over. Mom, Dad, what are you doing here? He looked past them, his brow tightening. Where's Renee? Why isn't she with you? Standing near the back of the crowd, Marin also walked over. Victoria, where's Renee? Mom ignored her completely and didn't answer Isaiah either. She couldn't even be bothered to fake a polite smile. Dad said evenly, barely containing the rage beneath his voice. Isaiah, Renee had something come up today. For the first time, Isaiah seemed to realize something was terribly wrong. The smile on his face slowly stiffened. Dad, did something happen? No rush. Mom let out a cold laugh before striding straight to the ballroom control booth in her high heels and picking up the microphone. I'm sorry to everyone here today. I know you're all friends of Renee and Isaiah's. Her voice rang clearly through every corner of the ballroom. Unfortunately, Renee won't be joining us tonight. A murmur spread through the crowd. But she did ask me to bring everyone a surprise. She reached over and pressed the play button. The giant LED screen, which had been looping our wedding photos moments before, flickered. The music cut off. Then a high-definition photograph filled the massive screen without warning. In it, 19-year-old Marin and Isaiah stood in each other's arms, smiling sweetly at the camera. They looked completely, hopelessly in love. The photograph stayed on the screen for several seconds. Then another appeared. Isaiah and Marin at 20. Isaiah kissing her forehead beside a lake. Another. Marin asleep against Isaiah's shoulder on a train. Another. Their hands intertwined beneath a restaurant table. The room erupted into whispers. Isaiah's champagne glass slipped from his fingers and shattered against the marble floor. Marin went completely white. Turn it off. Isaiah shouted. Mom didn't even blink. Instead, she pressed another button. The next image appeared. A recent photograph. Isaiah leaving a hotel. Marin walking beside him. The timestamp was from 8 months ago. Someone in the crowd gasped. That's them. No way. Didn't Isaiah marry Renee 3 years ago? Marin's face crumpled. Victoria, please. Mom finally looked at her. Please what? Her voice was dangerously calm. Please let you continue lying to my daughter? Marin's lips trembled. I never wanted to hurt Renee. Dad laughed once. It was an ugly, humorless sound. You slept with her husband. Marin lowered her head. I know. That confession sent another wave of murmurs through the ballroom. Isaiah stepped forward. Enough. Dad's eyes snapped toward him. You don't get to say enough. Isaiah swallowed. Renee isn't here. Whatever problems we have, they're between my wife and me. Mom smiled. Oh, she wanted to be here. She pointed toward the giant screen. She's watching every second. Isaiah froze. Mom's smile widened. And she wanted you to know something. The screen went black. Then white letters appeared. Isaiah Cole and Marin Reeves, the love story that lasted 11 years. Underneath came a second line, including the 3 years they spent deceiving Renee Bentley. The ballroom exploded. Someone actually cursed out loud. Isaiah's face drained of color. Marin covered her mouth. Then the final video began playing. It was a recording from inside the hospital. Isaiah supporting Marin as they left the maternity ward, his hand resting protectively over her head. Marin smiling up at him. Then came an audio recording. Isaiah's voice. Once Renee signs the anniversary documents, the house will be transferred into my name. Her father already promised to help with the acquisition. The room went silent. Marin's voice followed. Are you sure she'll sign? She trusts me. A pause. Then Isaiah laughed softly. She always has. Marin's voice lowered. And after the baby is born, we'll tell her the truth. Will she divorce you? She'll have no choice. A collective gasp swept through the ballroom. Dad's joy tightened. Mom's fingers curled around the microphone. But I wasn't finished. The screen changed again. This time, it showed pages from financial records, transfers, secret accounts, property documents, and finally, a contract. Isaiah had been quietly moving marital assets for almost a year. The man standing in the ballroom wasn't simply cheating on me. He had been preparing to leave me with nothing. The recording ended. Mom looked directly at Isaiah. You were planning to steal from my daughter. Isaiah's breathing became ragged. That isn't what happened. Dad stepped forward. Then explain it. I was going to tell Renee. When? Isaiah opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Dad nodded. Exactly. Marin suddenly grabbed Isaiah's arm. Isaiah, we need to leave. He pulled away. Don't touch me. Marin stared at him in disbelief. You said we'd always stay together. I said a lot of things. Her face shattered. Isaiah. He turned toward the ballroom doors. But 4 bodyguards immediately stepped in front of him. Isaiah stopped. Dad smiled. Don't worry. You're not being kidnapped. He pulled a folder from inside his jacket. You're simply going to remain here long enough for everyone to hear the rest. He tossed the folder onto a nearby table. Inside are the investigators' findings, your hotel records, your financial transfers, your messages with Marin, and the paternity test proving the child she's carrying is yours. Marin's knees nearly buckled. The entire room erupted again. A guest whispered, she's pregnant. Another replied, with her best friend's husband? Marin burst into tears. Renee didn't deserve this. Mom stared at her. No. Her voice cut through the room. She didn't. Then Mom looked toward the screen. Renee, sweetheart, if you're watching. The screen changed. My face appeared. I was sitting in my parents' living room, dressed in a black dress. I looked directly into the camera. Happy anniversary, Isaiah. His face went pale. I smiled. Not sweetly. Not sadly. I smiled like a woman who had finally stopped wondering whether she was crazy. I spent 3 years believing I had married the love of my life. I lifted a glass of champagne. I was wrong. Isaiah stared at the screen. Renee, I don't want your explanation. I tilted my head. I already have everything I need. I placed the glass down. Tomorrow morning, my lawyer will serve you divorce papers. Isaiah's eyes widened. And before you start panicking about the assets. I smiled. You should check your phone. His phone immediately began ringing. Then again. And again. He pulled it out. His bank had frozen every account connected to the assets he had attempted to transfer. My father's legal team had moved faster than he could imagine. Isaiah stared at the screen in horror. I leaned closer to the camera. You spent a year preparing to leave me with nothing. My smile disappeared. So I spent 1 month making sure you were the one left with nothing. The video ended. For several seconds, nobody moved. Then Dad stepped toward Isaiah. You should probably call your lawyer. Mom added sweetly. And Marin. Marin looked up through tear-filled eyes. Mom pointed toward the exit. You can call the father of your baby. Marin turned toward Isaiah. He didn't look at her. For the first time, she realized the man she had destroyed my marriage for wasn't running toward her. He was running away from her. And that was when Marin understood the cruelest part. She had gotten her first love back. But she had lost him the moment the consequences arrived. Meanwhile, 20 miles away, I took off my wedding ring. I placed it inside a small velvet box. Then I closed the lid. My 3-year marriage was over. But my life? That was only beginning. The next morning, Isaiah's lawyer arrived at my parents' house. He didn't come alone. Isaiah came with him. He looked exhausted, desperate, nothing like the confident man from the night before. Renee, please. Let me explain. I folded my arms. Explain what? That you cheated with my best friend for a year? That she's pregnant with your child? Or that you were secretly moving our assets? His face twisted. I made mistakes. I laughed. 3 years of marriage isn't a mistake. Marin suddenly appeared behind him, crying. Renee, I'm sorry. I looked at her. You were my best friend for 7 years. She sobbed. I never meant for this to happen. But you made sure it did. I handed Isaiah the divorce papers. Sign. He stared at them. If I sign, you'll take half of everything. No. I smiled. I already took what's mine. My father had frozen the accounts and recovered every asset Isaiah had tried to hide. The house, investments, and company shares remained legally protected. Isaiah had nothing left to bargain with. His lawyer whispered something to him. Isaiah's shoulders dropped. He signed. One signature. Then another. 3 years of marriage ended in less than 5 minutes. Marin reached for him. Isaiah. He stepped away from her. I need time. Her face collapsed. You said we'd finally be together. Isaiah looked at her with exhaustion. That's what I thought I wanted. Then he walked away. Marin stood there crying. I watched her quietly. You got him back. She looked at me. But you lost me. That hurt her more than anything else. Months later, the divorce was finalized. Isaiah's reputation was destroyed, his business partners abandoned him, and his family publicly cut. Ties with him after the financial scandal became impossible to hide. Marin gave birth to a baby girl. Isaiah acknowledged the child but refused to marry her. Their grand love story became a cautionary tale whispered throughout the city. As for me, I moved into my own apartment, returned to work, and started rebuilding everything I'd put aside for my marriage. One evening, I received a message from Marin. I still miss you. I stared at it for a long time. Then I deleted it. I didn't hate her anymore. Hatred required caring. And I was finally done giving her anything. A year after the divorce, I attended a charity gala. I wore a red dress, laughed with friends, and danced until midnight. Someone asked if I regretted my marriage. I smiled. Of course. Then I lifted my champagne glass. But I regret staying 3 years. I took a sip. I don't regret leaving. Across the room, I caught sight of Isaiah. He looked older, lonelier. He saw me too. For a moment, our eyes met. Then I turned away. Because the greatest revenge wasn't watching him suffer. It was realizing that his betrayal had stopped being the most important thing that ever happened to me. I had survived him. And now I was finally living without him.